Good morning, everyone. The 19th Sunday after Trinity. Intent of the 19th Sunday. Tact and Tolerance. A day of recognition of other religions. I think we can take tact and tolerance to apply to lots of things. The suggested focus in our liturgy is a day of recognition of other religions. We'll certainly touch on that. But before we go there, let's just think about tact and tolerance. Some people run those two words together and they think, well, if you've got tact, you've automatically got tolerance. I don't think that's the case. Most of us, as we get older, if we want to get on with other people, we find that you have to have tact. We all know the funny things and the not so funny things our children say, sitting at that dining table with guests, where they blurt out and give all the family secrets in a guileless sort of a way. And as they get a little bit older, or they don't want to be laughed at by the rest of the family, they learn that you've got to be a little bit tactful about the things you do and say. Tolerance, I think, is actually the journey that you're on, and tact is a sort of a technique that you learn to get on with one another. They're all highly prized, I think, and quite often they should be practiced a little bit more than we see in society. I think we can all learn tact, pretty much. Tolerance, I think, is a lifetime effort, and that's what this Sunday is all about. As I said, the suggested focus is on other religions, because in the liberal Catholic Church we recognise the wisdom that is in all religions. This is the wisdom that we look for in other people and in other cultures and in other religions. This doesn't mean we tolerate extremism and violence and viciousness, not at all. There is deep wisdom in all the spiritual traditions on earth, and we look for that, as it says in the Gospel. Christ places his spark in everybody's heart. He uses the analogy of sheep. We'll come to that. So the collect starts, "O God, who meetest every man upon that path, by which he draweth nigh unto thee." In other words, from whatever spiritual direction you're coming, with the right intent in your heart, you are acceptable to God. That's God's plan. We are all different, and we might wonder why we're all different. We might wonder why all the plants are different, or why all the animals look different, and all the rest of it. One way of looking at that is that we have lessons to learn, and we're all different, and they're all different lessons. Just like the plants and the animals all do things in different ways, and they learn things in different ways. Different levels of consciousness, yes. Different levels of understanding and awareness, yes. But the same applies to us. Lots of us in the community have different levels of awareness and understanding, and we learn different lessons. As I say to my children when they're listening, those to whom much is given, much is expected. And this is the message that comes through in these lessons today. In the Epistle from St Paul, which Kathy read this morning, it's talking about a particular level of consciousness. It's talking about a particular level of operating. In our particular world, now, contemporary world, we use words about consciousness and cognition and understanding. These are relatively new words and relatively new ideas. Science pushes into all the little corners of the physical world. And one of the areas that it pushes into is consciousness. A lot of discussion about consciousness. Is consciousness in the brain? Is consciousness in the nerves? Is consciousness seen in the activity of the brain, using the scan of the brain? When you ask someone, what is it ice cream taste like? What does it feel like to fall in love? What do you think about your mother? When did you hurt your finger in the door last? You can bring all these sensations into the brain, and there's all sorts of wonderings about how this can be done. There is also a large group of thinking which says consciousness won't be found in the physical brain. The physical brain is essential for life on earth, but consciousness exists outside the physical brain. These things will continue for a while yet. But the point about the epistle that I want to make is that let's use the word point of view or awareness or an attitude. If you adopt an attitude where you're in line with God's will, and so we've all got an interior life. We all tend to see things from outside. We've always got reasons from our side why we do things. So St. Paul is saying, while you're in this mode, while you're thinking about things from your side, inside you, if you're in alignment with God's will, and you also call to mind the spark of Christ within you, you are then looking for the variety of human behaviour outside you, but not getting distracted by it. You're saying to yourself, I'm different to that person. I don't really go along with that behaviour. I don't really want to adopt that method of doing things. I am attempting to be in line with God's will. I am attempting to play out my destiny through God's will in me. But I'm not going to draw any judgments on that person. I'm not going to put up an artificial barrier between me and that person by saying, I don't like that person's different to me. What St. Paul is saying is just about everybody is different to everybody else. But if you adopt what we might call the level of consciousness of Christ, or Christ consciousness, you just stay on that track and just recognize that different is just different. That's all it is. It's just different. And then he uses the analogy at the end about the Olympics. You recall that Greek culture was around the Mediterranean. Yes, the Romans were very active. But long before that, the whole culture in that area was dominated by Greek culture. The Olympic Games, a lot of gymnastics and all those sorts of things. Races at the Olympic Games. People knew about this. So the idea of having a race, a spiritual race, would have been a nice analogy to use with those people. So he's saying everybody gets fit and they're focusing on that one thing. They're getting themselves physically fit. Only one person is going to win that race, the winner. He's saying, don't just focus on the physical stuff. Just focus on, first of all, getting alignment. And then actually, all of us can experience the abundance that comes with that alignment. And this is what Jesus says in the gospel. He says, just using the analogy of sheep, he's saying, I know you all because I am in you, and in that sense you are in me. So while you're in that state, while you're in that recollection, while you continue to recall and look at life in that way, we are one. And he's saying while you're in that state and while you're growing in that state, your life can be more and more abundant, not less and less, more and more. You're dropping away all the limitations like intolerance. Intolerance is such a restricting thing. You can't behave with the freedom that St. Paul talks about in the epistle. You can't roll with the punches, we might use that expression. You can't be infinitely adaptable, as St. Paul is saying. Someone who is intolerant is not very adaptable. We see this in ourselves, of course, and we should recognize that we're just a little bit out of alignment then with the state of mind that we should be when we just see ourselves in that light. Jesus goes on to say that there's other people and other folds, and this is sometimes interpreted as other spiritual traditions. This is not saying that Christianity is superior to anything else. What this is saying is the concept of that deep spark, that ancient deep spark of deep spirituality, that is common to all the religions. The religions are just how they manifest on the physical world and with people's particular point of view. You know, we're not all very clever, and we don't always exhibit Christ consciousness. If we did, there might be a universal religion on the planet. While we have different cultures and different outlooks, we have different expressions. This is just the way we grow. We grow from where we are to where we should be on this chosen path. So tact and tolerance, we can apply it in all sorts of places. I could have given a similar talk about false news and the internet. It's exactly the same thing. While you're out of alignment, it's so hard to tell whether something feels right or not. It's the same thing. But tact and tolerance applied as suggested in the spiritual traditions, we've sort of got a bit of an opinion about that, and we see that in our lives. So let's take these thoughts into this week coming forward. Tact, yes, we learn that, it's good. Say the wrong thing at the wrong time, we learn to try and avoid that. Tolerance, that's the path, that's the broadening, that's the alignment with your destiny in alignment with God's will.